There are no bad teams in this top 8 stage. And we have a tough quarterfinals matchup, but it's kind of just exciting to have the banger straight away. We might as well beat them now.
Somebody just flushed up the wall! That's it, he's dead! I didn't even see it.
上次跟 Regulus 相遇是18年决赛，后面发生什么，我赢了。
The LPL representatives look even crazier than they did last time.
因为 LPL 队伍之间打的话，就不会出现那种很一边倒的局势，就感觉可以给观众们带来一个更加激烈的 BO5。
선머에 3대0으로 이겨서 이번에도 좀 쉽게 이길 수 있을 거라는 생각은 하지 않고
내전에 대해서는 뭐 그냥 LCK 결승전 때 복수를 하고 싶습니다.
대박! 또 나온다! 그리고 제키노는요? 드래곤의 다운!
I get these inklings that 2020 might be the revenge of the LCK.
뭐 트위터로만 봐도 뭔가 자신감이 넘쳐 보이는데 되게 재밌더라고요. 근데 그렇게 자신감 있어 하다가 3대0으로 지면은 많이 충격받을 것 같은데 저희가 꼭 그렇게 이기고 싶습니다.
At least we end up with 2 second seeds. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but have you seen the #1 seed?
Self-made in trouble as ruler. Oh my god, the AoE is Gingy! They say no! Oh no, Beyond is gonna get himself away! Oh, Resports, man! No mercy! As they back out, they're not put together. You got Gangplank on the flank, Gangplank. One big shot back! Can you do it? Huge! My god! One moment, one shot, one barrel! That's all you need, Suning! All of Europe felt that Gangplank. Not coming in from the sun. And look at all that damage. Goodbye, hopes and dreams. Dom1 Gaming just absolutely shredded.
We beat every single team that Korea sent us last year. I think it could happen again. We can beat any of these teams on any day.
You never know what will happen at Worlds.
The stage is set, the curtain is drawn.
没人能够预见会是这种情况。
This is the game people want to see.
新的王者诞生了
Kaboom! They lit the fuse.
你看到了吗
They're gonna win. This is it.
Welcome everyone to the opening day of the World's 2020 knockout stage in Shanghai, China. We're getting some wonderful scenic shots. Scenic, what is the word? Scenic shots. That's a great start, Chalks. I just absolutely nailed that. But we're going to continue, and it's all about the competition. Only 8 teams remain in the fight for the Summoners Cup. And the LCK champions Dam1 are looking for redemption after last year's exit as they face off against DRX, who's also looking for redemption in a rematch of the LCK Summer Finals. I'm Chalks, joined by Ender and Yamato, and I hope you all got some rest because it promises to be some banger matchups in the quarterfinals.
I'm ready. I slept for like 10 hours last night like a baby, ready for some games to get into today. The quarterfinals, I'm always pumped.
Nice.
Nice.
Maybe sleep well, do they? Because they cry a lot.
No, actually,
they do cry a lot, don't
doesn't
they?
really make a lot of sense.
I slept like a cat.
Like a cat. They
Cats
actually
sleep
sleep
well.
really well and all the time, right? So we'll see. Let's take a look at the bracket because last week we closed out the group stage, followed by the knockout stage draw, which leads to the following matchups. First off, what were your initial thoughts, Yamato, when you saw this draw come out?
No, on my end, I'm just happy we have for sure the 8 best teams. I remember last year we didn't have RNG. That left me a little bit bitter, but this time around we know that these are the best teams possible. Each best of 5 is going to be super, super exciting. I was hoping for some cross-continental matchups, but some of the classics are good too.
Look, I'm still excited for LPL and LCK Autumn. I think that usually when we get into the knockout stage, there's some battles over regional pride, but in this bracket in 2020, it's about regional control between the LPL and the LCK.
That's a good point. I've seen it also on social, people saying, oh, we wanted our LCK, LPL battles earlier. But think about it this way. If we don't get the LEC versus LEC final, which, come on, the chances are slim that that's not going to happen. It's a joke. Then we get at least an LPL versus LCK title fight. And that is just so cool to me with the rise of the LCK. LPL, who's been holding down the Summoners Cup for 2 years now, they're on home soil. The possibility of a Damwon top final. I mean, there's a lot of cool options here.
Yeah, for sure. I think you have a great point there. You're definitely sending the best team your region has to offer if you make it all the way to the final.
Exactly.
It's like the gauntlet is the test. Who are going to send to represent our region in the final? The bracket is stacked to the bone. All of these matchups are going to be super exciting because, you know, even though we've seen them in the past, a lot of things can change within the span of time. We've seen, you know, 1 month can change everything.
And you talk about the span of time going like even more zoomed out. For a long time, it was, you know, LPL versus LCK in those world finals.
Yeah.
Then it was LCK versus LCK. In the last couple of years, it's been LPL versus EU. So it is a bit of a return there potentially with that.
Yes, it is. And if we go outside of kind of the regions and then look at the teams, we have so many interesting stories as well as the players under that. I feel like there's a lot of inspirational and aspirational connections between the players. A lot of players who have been there and are fighting their way back to the top now. A lot of players who take their first steps on the international stage, like Pioshik, for instance, and are looking to get that title. And there's just so much nuance to all these teams and all these players all coming together in the quarterfinals and in the knockouts.
Yeah, for sure. I think I have such a great amount of respect for the players that keep doing it again and again.
Yes.
Because there are just a few names, a handful of names that keep returning to the world stage, and always we feel the same level of excitement. The name that stands out in my mind, of course, is Ruler or a Reckless or a Jackie Love now. These players are creating history, and you know they're also in form. That's what's so crazy about it. Some players maybe go to Worlds once and then you never hear of them again. Even that single thing happening is impressive, but to do it time and time again, wow.
Definitely so. For Damwon also, the big story was last year. We saw it there in the teaser, getting knocked out, and now coming into the World Championship as a reinvigorated Damwon that's looking for the title and nothing less. Ruler, a great example as well. And as you said, Jackie Love and Reckless, of course, that IG final in 2018, it didn't last long for Reckless and also not for Jackie Love. And they've talked about how cool it is to see each other again, even though Jackie Love made it pretty clear that he's just going to completely dumpster them.
Yeah, Jackie Love reminded us all of who won the last time they faced in 2018. But, you know, a lot of times you hear about like rivalries between teams and players in League, and it's hard to know like how legit those are, especially when they do play from different regions. But I was listening to an interview that Reckless did with Ashley Kang, actually, and it's legit, right? He takes losses, especially in big moments against teams like G2 personally, and he took that loss against Jackie Love. He wants that win back.
Yeah, for sure. If you just think of the story of Reckless and how he has conquered his demons. In the past, it was RNG, and then they beat them. Last year, it was G2, and they beat them in a best of 5. We don't talk about the 3-0 finals. Sure, we have to talk about it. We mention it. But all in all, I think the story of Reckless is always him conquering his own demons. And Jackie Love, it's crazy to think that his career, like it was his rookie year, 2018.
Crazy.
And now he's continuing, and right now he's looking by like the best AD carry in the tournament.
And to button this up then, can anyone beat the LPL on home soil? That advantage they have as well. What do you think?
Honestly, it's going to be tough. It's going to be super, super tough. I think considering the teams that are in the bracket, I think these are the best chances you can get coming into this year, but it's looking so difficult. I think we're going to see how the teams progress and learn, because that's always the story of World Championship. It's not the performance they show in groups, and that's going to translate all the way to the finals, because there's been teams in the past like FPX or IG, they haven't been perfect in groups, and then there's development. So it's tough to say right now in this moment, but we're going to see as the bracket proceeds.
Yeah, I'll also say it's a very exclusive list of people that have won a World Championship more than one time. The FLICKRs, the Bangies. Jackie Love has a chance on the best LPL team at Worlds to do that this year.
We'll see on Saturday how they do. And if we focus in on today and some of the interesting stories, I would like to talk about Deft in the bot lane for DRX. He is one of the veterans here at the World Championship, and he's looking for a crowning achievement after an eventful career. We said already, it's going to be a difficult one, but when we talk about the veterans, the people who have worked on it for years and years and kept fighting, Deft is definitely part of that list.
Yeah, I mean, Deft, everyone, you should remember if you've been following the scene for a very long time, he was a part of that Samsung Blue roster that came into the 2014 World Championship as one of the heavy favorites. They ended up losing to Samsung White in that semifinal, and he's been to so many Worlds since. I believe this is his 5th Worlds in total, but since that moment, he has never made it past the quarterfinal stage, getting upset, getting beaten, getting knocked out in so many of the scenarios.
Which is so crazy to think. Yeah, like when I think of the name Deft, it's like, yeah, world champion caliber. But as you said, always quarterfinals, that's when the story runs short. We had 2018, but of course, KT facing against IG in a best of 5.
Oh, that was such a heartbreaker too.
Definitely a heartbreaker. Same thing with, you know, EDG against Fnatic back in 2015, I believe. They won MSI the same year, and then in quarters they fell short. DRX, I remember last year, they were so close to beating T1 in the qualifier for the World Championship. It's always been the story of so close, but Deft as a player, as an individual player, has always delivered high caliber gameplay.
Yeah, and it's been a huge journey for him as well, because I think after 2014, a lot of people remember the Korean Exodus, where so many of those great LCK players left and went over to the LPL, and he tried his luck over on EDG there, winning the MSI, as you mentioned, but now he's returned back to the LCK after so many years in his career to try and lift a trophy.
Yeah, he was part of the kind of the first wave of players that went over to the LPL, and it looked very good at the beginning. As said, EDG beat SKT, and I think if you're Deft then in that MSI final, you think, well, this is going great, and then you end up going to the World Championship, getting knocked out in the quarterfinal. Then the year after at the World Championship, in a group with AHQ, INTZ, and H2K, you take 2nd seed and then get knocked out by the Rocks Tigers. That's just also frustrating, and that's why it comes down to these singular games, these singular moments. And for Deft, that is also one of the reasons why he really wants to show up at this World Championship. Unfortunately, the odds seem kind of stacked against him because Damwon has been so incredibly strong.
That one has been on fire. Like, their story throughout the entire year has just been the story of growth. If someone told me at the beginning of spring that they would look like a team that is a potential world champion, I'd be like, you are mad. You are insane. In summer, they have improved and improved and improved. Over the span of the whole split, they dropped 5 games, and they continue in same fashion in the group stage as well. Damwon is by far the most precise team we have at this tournament, and that's what makes them one of the potential favorites to take it all.
We'll dive deep into their playstyle in just a bit, but as said, Deft's story, Damwon, maybe you could say their bot lane isn't as well-rounded as the rest, but they've changed that as well, and that's going great. So it's going to be a hard matchup for him, but we'll see. And talking about Damwon, last week we saw them take on JD Gaming to close out Group B, and they didn't get the win, but the LCK champions had a moment of magic, and this is our Red Bull top play. As said, they didn't end up winning, but they were behind and still managed to find the openings.
Yeah, you know, they kept him interested for a long time here. They kept JDG in it, but then eventually you're going to see the whole flank come down, Barrel on his Alistar on their own. I think he used that Bard portal to enter on into the fight as well. And then off the corner of the screen, it's this long flank as they keep them involved. Canyon's chilling in mid lane right now. He has to run all the way down here before he makes the play happen.
Yeah, the man was farming. That's kind of what you got to do with Graves. Push that mid wave and then come around with the flank. His name is Bazooka Joe. Look at him go. Boom, grenade into the ultimate. I don't know the name of the ultimates. That's not my job.
Collateral damage.
Collateral damage. Boom. All right, collateral damage. What is the initial damage? I thought it's
very high.
Okay.
A lot of damage.
I will not question the logic of the name of the ultimate, but all in all, the flank, as you mentioned, and this is, you know, the element that is so exciting about Damwon, how they come into fights. We saw Nuguri flanks. The name of the game is always flanks.
To be honest, I would have gotten the Noguri flank if it was up to me for the top play, because that was one of the things that, for me, epitomizes kind of how they play and how they can play through it.
Every single game around a dragon, watch Noguri. He's always going to be in the fog of war, coming around where you don't expect him, and he will destroy every team he plays against.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, but as we go, let's listen to Top Esports Comms versus DRX last week in Sounds of the Game, presented by Bose.
这边，在这边。
要养了，
别站一起，别站一起。
没事，我没打。
我来了，可以打。
来，
送了，
慢点，加油！能追，
要看加聊吧。
能追，
加聊，
杀！
先把加聊杀了。
杀！
还能追吗？369。
推吧。
哎，是加那个还有大。
哎，我们发现大要不？
我还有干锅。
来 ，X，
nice，大龙，可以。
大龙可以上，先去，
加两 TP 了，我还有大，还有干锅，
去，可以打，
你能打，一定能打。
nice。
Welcome back, everyone, to Worlds Countdown ahead of Damwon versus DRX, which is a rematch of the LCK Summer Finals. And I am joined by LCK caster Valdez to help set the stage. Hello.
Hey, Shox, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, I'm really happy that we can have you on the show. We know this is a multi-region production, so all the help from the local analysts we can get, of course. First up, I want to get a bit of a temperature check from you, from your home region, the LCK, and to talk about the rise of the LCK or the return of the LCK. How happy are you about your team so far?
Obviously, it's a great feeling. The thing about the LCK is that you talk about the rise, and it's something that Yamato Kainen actually touched on the couch, was that looking at Damwon even, you saw in spring that it was a totally different setup that we had. If you guys remember, T1 ended up taking the victory in the spring final over Gen G, and that was a 3-0, but that was a totally different landscape from what we're looking at now, which is Damwon on top, and DRX and Gen G kind of fighting for that second place, and T1 not even being here at Worlds, which a lot of people are very sad about. But it's interesting because the rise of LCK is that we had that mid-season tournament, which was the only one due to Corona, we had with China. And I think that a lot of the Korean teams, they went into that tournament not knowing what to expect. They were like, oh, we can just play our same style. And then they got crushed. And all of a sudden, it like lit a fire in a lot of these teams, especially Damwon. They went from 4th place in the playoffs, 5th place in the spring standings, to now the best team possibly at Worlds. And that is just a crazy rise to see. And obviously, really excited to see how it's all going to come to a close.
Absolutely. Thank you for that kind of contextualization of Damwon in particular, because we do see also across the other regions that the lack of an MSI does have its effects. And it's a very good thing that the LCK teams were able to adapt after that mid-season cup. Now, I want to ask you about DRX specifically, because it's kind of sad because everyone keeps talking about Damwon because they are so strong, and it was a 3-0 in the summer finals. So from what you've seen from DRX specifically, how much of a different best of 5 do you think we might see here today?
Well, yeah, that first best of 5 that we saw was actually DRX coming ahead 3-2. That was in the playoffs of spring. And then, as you mentioned, in the summer finals, Damwon crushed them, and it was not close. And that was the reason why all of us here that were, the LCK commentators and fans and stuff, we were looking at it and saying, wow, Damwon is by and far the best team. And honestly, coming over here to Worlds, other than that one loss to JDG, which obviously JDG is a really strong team, Damwon still look really strong, but they still have a lot to show, right? I think the meta here at Worlds is interesting because a lot of what Damwon has shown is that Canyon is a super beast, right? Everybody was talking about their crazy strong solo laners and how Canyon kind of supports them. And, Beryl ended up being so amazing as well. But, nobody has really seen the potential of Showmaker carry. What does that look like? For DRX, I think it is going to be really difficult, right? I'm not going to lie to you. I'll be honest. The thing that I think they will have to do is they'll have to drag Damwon into, out of Damwon's game, right? Yeah. If Damwon lets Canyon run wild, or rather if DRX let Canyon run wild and Pyoshik gets no help, I think it's going to be dominance in the jungle right from the get-go. And DRX is a really young lineup as well that I think can struggle a little bit under that pressure. But if DRX get ahead in the lanes, obviously they have some sick, insane solo laners like Chovy, who could really try to get that edge over Showmaker. If they could get ahead like that and really try to bring it into this brawly solo Q-esque style with maybe Deft and Chovy carrying, there is a chance for them. But honestly, coming into this one, I would actually predict the 3-0 for Damwon.
Oh, so the repeat. I was going to ask you about your predictions, but I guess that's it. Okay, then tell me, I know it's hard, one thing you want to see from DRX to make sure we get a more competitive series, perhaps starting in the draft, because I heard those were quite a point of contention in the finals as well.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, it's rough because the draft is always let's try to take away some of the big picks from the main players, the solo laners, or the carry players. But I don't think that's actually possible against Damwon. I think a lot of the DRX players also have a pretty deep champion pool as well. But I think, especially on the side of Damwon, Nuguri can play literally anything. Yeah. Canyon, we've seen him on very aggressive junglers so far. He can play other stuff. We haven't really seen too much of that. Obviously, same goes for everybody else. Something I would like to see from DRX is, I think Pyoshik really needs to turn it on in a different way, right? There's something that a lot of the Korean commentators like to use, which is in terms of junglers, which is we have the carnivore junglers and the herbivore junglers. The carnivore junglers are like Canyon, right? They're going to get in your face. They're going to counter jungle you. They're going to attack your lanes, and you're not going to be able to get away from this. Herbivore junglers are like Pioche, right? Or Cloud Templar in the past. They always make fun of him for being an or jungler. And Pioche is the same, right? He needs to turn on a different gear. He needs to be able to challenge Canyon in the jungle. He needs to be able to get those efficient ganks off, and he can't just be sitting in the jungle farming on Lilia for 15 minutes because the game is going to be over if that happens.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. You had a little bit of a connection hiccup, but we made it and we got everything you said. Thank you so much for giving us that context about both teams.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Shocks. It was great to be here.
No problem. Enjoy the best of 5 yourself. I'm going to go back to the analyst desk, and a lot of good info, I think, there about the background of the two teams. But even Valdez, when asked repeatedly about what DRX can do, he just admits that they are up against it in this one.
They're against some beasts today in Dom1. It's going to be really tough for them, but I do like a lot of what they do, especially in early game, and I know we're going to dive into that because that's where they can compete.
For sure. And Yamato, give us a bit of an overview of the LCK year and DRX versus Dom1, because it wasn't always this dire for DRX versus Dom1.
You know, in the beginning of the summer season, DRX looked like the strongest team. They were the ones that were contesting for the first place, and the first time we saw Dama versus DRX, DRX won it. It was a dirty best of 3, but DRX came through. I think the story of DRX was always, I had this question in my mind, I was like, oh, this team, they feel like they're set for playoffs. They're just kind of experimenting with drafts, but the experimentation never stopped. It just continued. The science in the draft continued, and then eventually it was a full-out failure at the end of the split.
Let's talk about what's been going well for them from that failure at the end of the split, now at the World Championship. They ended up in a hard group with Top Esports, fought for that first spot, eventually got second seed. But what we did see were very early game, aggressive games from them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of this comes down to their play style in the early game, because this is not a team that is trying to run around and kill you in lane. Instead, it's a team of laners who draft prio lanes and play for their jungler so that he can take enemy camps, build up CS leads into lanes, and play for turret play. So it's not bloody games, but that does not mean they're inactive or slow games.
I think the first 15 minutes that they showcased against Top Esports in their final match in the group stage was super beautiful, because they turned all of these small things, like a Gromp and like a mark for Kindred, into an objective that everyone could rally around. And this was a very new look for DRX, because they actually had a composition that made sense, and then throughout that, with the early game, they actually controlled through Pioche and not through Chovy.
I love that you brought up Pioche and especially Kindred. We know that he's a rookie on the world stage, but he's actually been playing really well. And we see that he, as one of the junglers at this tournament, does find answers versus the Nidalees and the Graves of this world.
Yeah, I mean, he, as you said, he's a Kindred player, right? So if the Graves comes out, expect him to be locking in the Kindred. I believe it was Kindred's 5th birthday yesterday as well. So it all lines up for him. Happy birthday. And you know what? His name means Mark in Korean. So he's been a long-time Kindred main, but definitely has adapted to these farming junglers like the Lilia, as well as those heavy invade counter jungle type of picks.
What did you think of what Valdez said about the carnivore and the herbivore junglers and the fact that he's up versus Canyon specifically?
So it is interesting, because carnivore and herbivore is usually described to, or used to describe like more passive or more active. And I would say that Pioche isn't a carnivore jungler in that he's not usually running into lanes and killing people, but he's not 100% a herbivore either, because he still likes to get in your face, get into the enemy jungle and take it away.
He definitely has teeth. I think
he's an omnivore.
He's an omnivore. Pioche is an omnivore. Let's see.
Yeah, you have to farm a lot too. It works for the meta.
When we look at the matchup versus Dom1, and we also saw it in the finals, even though the strength of DRX definitely lies in that they can get advantages in lane, it actually comes very easy to them. But we see that Dom1 gets advantages early too, and they really ramp it up after 15 minutes, as well as in the team fights. And this is something to look out for today.
What's so crazy about, I mentioned it earlier, about Dom1 is just that they are so precise. I feel like whatever the game state is in, I think they're very quick to recognize what play, who they need to get ahead, what team fight they need to look for in order to win games, and that is always DRX's weakness, because I think they're always in one mode. They want to go forward in the team fights, while DRX and like Damwon can always piece it together. They have crazy flanks. They know how to play a poke composition. They know how to play around each other. What I feel about Damwon is just that they always rally around the same thing, but it just makes them so lethal. It's like 5 fingers turn into a fist.
Precise is
always.
what you use.
Yeah.
Very precise.
Damwon, they scope in, but they don't immediately pull the trigger, right? They are very patient, especially leading into team fights. I see it so much in Naguri's play as well. He's the best team fighting top laner in the world, and it's about waiting for that perfect moment, and that's something that Damwon do so well.
So well. Valdez brought it up there. We haven't even seen the Showmaker carry, even though he is also one of those individual talents on the side of Damwon. And he's up versus Chovy, and that's just a very illustrious mid-lane matchup to kick us off with.
Yeah, for sure. These are two guys that have been fighting against each other since the beginning of both of their careers. It was in Challenger, and then always everyone followed these two careers throughout the years that they've played. Also in this year, in matchups, they've gone 9 against 9, which is just a wonderful statistic. I agree completely with Valdez about the Showmaker carry. We haven't seen it yet, but we haven't seen a Chovy carry either. Oh. And I'm hoping, you know, in the current mid-meta, it isn't a lot about the mid-lane carries. There's a lot of Galio, a lot of Set, a lot of champions that are supporting the jungler. But maybe in a best of 5, when bans begin to show up, maybe we'll actually see a Showmaker carry or a Chovy carry.
That's what we're hoping
That's what we're hoping, really.
Yeah, and I think we saw some like Aurelias in the past and stuff like that, which can get really exciting. But I feel like when you look at the way these two players play the game, Showmaker is usually more of the guy that will influence the rest of the map on global picks, perhaps, or just roaming out of his lane too. So when you're playing for your jungler, for your side lanes, Showmaker looks really, really good.
And we'll touch on all the other matchups, I'm sure, as we go through this day. But I did want to look at draft specifically. We have that 3-0 sample size from LCK Summer. So, Yamato, you wanted to take a look at some of the draft specifically because DRX dropped the ball in many of these, if not all.
So I think, you know, so interesting, I mentioned it before, that DRX, I thought they were experimenting throughout the regular split, but the experimentation never stopped. So here we had the Pyke pick. I was watching a lot of Korea stream, and he was playing a lot of Pyke, because Pyke got pretty much buffed, but then it got brought up here, and you look at the draft, maybe early game, maybe you can skirmish a bit, but then afterwards, you're met with the question, how are we supposed to win this game? Maybe we have a 20 CS lead, but what does it matter when we can't really finish the game against an Ornn, a Caitlyn, a Lux? It was always, you know, there's no red line here at all. When I look at this side, it's very easy to see, okay, bot side, we play into bot side, mid into bot, Volibear Syndra, good synergy. It's very easy to see like a game plan, and this is always the issue with DRX.
It's so important for DRX today to make sure they have some scaling options. That's why I think picks like the Kindred to counter out Canyon's Graves is going to be super, super important. And then ease of execution in team fights, because this is a skirmish comp. This is not a team fight comp, and they need to be able to match in the 5v5s, because that is where they always get beaten by Damwon.
Yeah, let's get into predictions then. It's been a bit depressing, I should say, from the side of Valdez, but you have to be honest. Of course, saying he thinks it's going to be a repeat, a three-peat, 3 games in a row then for Damwon. What do you think here? Does DRX have more opportunities?
I think DRX have definitely improved, because I think their drafting is better. I liked what they showcased against Top Esports, but the issue always comes in the mid to late game in terms of how they execute fights and how they approach the game. I just feel like Damwon is DRX's kryptonite. DRX need to have a composition, as you mentioned, that is snowballing from the early, because that's their strength, and just simple in terms of playstyle. You just go in, because that's the only gear that DRX knows.
Yeah, look, DRX, they've learned, they've improved, but so have Damwon. Damwon are the better team. They're favorites to win the tournament. I think it's a 3-0.
Yeah, 3-0 as well. I forgot to say.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear from your side. Well, I at least hope that the glass is half full and DRX have picked up a couple of things and approached the draft in a way that we will get more than 3 games, because it would be a shame in our first round of knockouts to not see it go the distance. We will see what happens. It is LCK versus LCK Civil War, and the World's 2020 knockout starts with an LCK showdown. Indeed, DRX look to get their revenge over Damwon.